One of the other big stories not getting enough coverage today, we mentioned it a bit earlier, is the supplemental. It finally dropped. We've been waiting a couple of months now for a supplemental budget request to pay for operations in Iran, knowing that $1.5 trillion budget request has been made for the Pentagon overall. This one we round up to $88 billion, Kaylee, to help cover the costs of the war, along with some other priorities. And it got the attention once again of Steve Ellis at the group Taxpayers for Common Sense, out with a blistering reaction here in which it jumps off the page. About 6 weeks ago, he writes, the Pentagon put the cost of the Iran war at $29 billion. Here you see the statement on your screen. Now they want more than twice that. Steve Ellis says either the administration was not being honest about the cost then, or they're not being honest about the costs now. He is the force behind Taxpayers and with us in studio. Steve, it's great to see you. I fear that you might have an answer to that question. Do you? Or doesn't it matter?
Well, it doesn't seem like there's any real numbers. I mean, as we said, they either were lying then or they're lying now. They don't add up. I mean, because you had $29 billion after more than 70 days of a shooting war, is what they estimated.
Yes.
Now you're a little bit more than 40 days later, and it's been mostly a ceasefire in there, and they're more than doubling the request. It's $67 billion is what they're asking for the Pentagon. And in addition, when you add in backfilling for the Coast Guard and State Department, you're looking at $70 billion, so well over twice as much in a very short period of time. So it doesn't add up.
Well, however they're doing the math over there, there is an argument that I would imagine the administration is going to make, which is this is necessary for the defense of the country. Should this spending really be considered that discretionary? Don't we need to restock our munitions and the like?
Well, Kaylee, you're absolutely right. We do. But the thing is that the Pentagon is awash in cash. I mean, it's not just the $1.5 trillion request this year. They got extra money in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act last summer, and they still have $100 billion of that money just sloshing around. So really what we're seeing is the Pentagon is trying to do a money grab any which way they can. So they asked for $250 billion more in their base budget, $350 billion more in another reconciliation package. And so now we're talking about another $67 billion. So they're just trying to figure out, get their finger in that appropriations pie however they can.
Well, of course, there's a lot more than defense in here. And I think the idea was to sweeten the pot for maybe get some more votes. Let's talk about what's really in here. $1.35 billion to fight the Ebola outbreak in Central Africa. $500 million for the National Park Service to repair the World War II memorial, which would hopefully go better than the reflecting pool. $10 billion in economic assistance to farmers. There's a farm bailout in this defense supplemental request, and more than $1 billion for Florida's agricultural sector. Kaylee, we find $1 billion to modernize Penn Station in New York City. I kind of hope that stays in there, to be honest with you. Steve, how does this all apply to defense?
It doesn't. And I mean, certainly there is a Christmas tree effect that happens on these. You start putting the adornments on there to try to get
it pass?
Yeah, well, I mean, arguably, but then all of a sudden it starts attracting flies too, or you start wondering, is this really necessary, and there's going to be criticism about it. I mean, you mentioned the ag bailout. That they've gotten the ag sector's gotten more than $50 billion in bailouts over the last, or more than $60 billion in ag bailouts over the last 5 years. So this is just another one of this sort of money sloshing around that they're doing. There's other policy provisions in there too. They're trying to do year-round E15 for ethanol. So they're just trying to sweeten the pot. Now, whether that actually gets it over the finish line is anybody's guess.
Well, and it's a question as to whether or not this smaller in scale supplemental, although you obviously think this number maybe is too big, whether that can get over the finish line, or whether you can still see a more than $300 billion reconciliation 3.0 bill, because they also have suggested the Pentagon should get more money through that. Of course, the House wants to attach the Save America Act to it too. Unclear how or whether that will be ruled as budgetary. If you're dealing with numbers of that size, there's going to be fiscal hawks in Congress who are going to want to see offsets. Are they going to be able to find them?
Well, we're coming up with a list of ways to cut the Pentagon's budget and cut spending, and we'll be out with that next week, actually, available at taxpayer.net. But No, they're not. They're not going to be able to find those offsets readily available. I mean, these are really serious cuts that you would have to do. And so, I mean, most people think that reconciliation 3.0, the third bite of the apple, that $350 billion for the Pentagon, is dead in the water. It's just going to be hard to get that level of support for something like that. They are not going to offset it for the most part. And so I'm feeling that that's why something like this supplemental, it gets some legs. Okay, you don't want to give us the $350 billion. Well, how about the $67 billion? I mean, that's a fraction. Come on. All right, Kaylee.
We're saving money all the time around here, Steve. The numbers turned out to be very different from what I was told, was the statement from Susan Collins, who chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee, which
kind of an important
sounds
person
like,
to know
yes,
what the numbers are supposed to be.
Sounds like taxpayers. You're either lying then or you're lying now. So let's back off a bit. You remind us we're, what, $40 trillion in debt. September's coming. No one's getting along. Midterm elections in November. We're cruising for a shutdown again, aren't we?
I don't know if either party has really got the appetite for a shutdown.
Yeah. Do they
right
have the
before the
appetite
election.
to vote for each other's priorities?
Well, no, I think it's more like the appetite for a continuing resolution. And you kick the can into the lame duck after the election, and then you deal with it. And then whoever's feeling their oats because of the election kind of is going to push. But I think that's more likely. The last shutdown was pretty bruising and extended, and I think it's still in voters' consciousness. So I don't think either party wants to be perceived as being responsible for that.
Well, and if it's a continuing resolution we end up with, could the Pentagon actually end up with even less money than they had requested for this fiscal year ultimately?
Well, they still got a big boost last year, and you know, I mean, they got a significant boost in the base budget, so they'll be fine. And not only that, at some point they are presumably going to do the full year appropriations, and so they can survive on $1 trillion for a few months.
That's interesting. When we hear about, though, the need for a generational investment in the defense industrial base, is there enough money for that? Should that be a separate bill? Is this a wider conversation, or is it not true?
Well, for instance, when you break down what this request was, there was about $2 billion in there for UAVs. Yeah. And so really what you've seen both in Ukraine and you've seen in Iran is that it's been less we need to spend on these exotic, expensive platforms, but that you want to have cheap and plentiful platforms, which presumably would be less costly than, you know, the sixth generation fighter. Right. And so that's where I feel like it shouldn't be an and, it's a pivot, and it's a sort of recognizing we still need to have aircraft carriers and things like that, but we need to be making these investments in the smaller and less exotic and more replaceable items than, you know, an F-15 Eagle that we've lost several of them in Iran.
We're about out of time. We just have 30 seconds left, but the Speaker of the House is expected to be visiting the President at the White House just moments from now. What would you tell him about how he should be approaching these asks from the White House?
What Speaker Johnson should say to the President, or what I would
you say to the Speaker?
I would say that there is not an unlimited appetite for spending, and particularly in the Republican conference. And they've got a very small majority, so they need to be able to pick their fights.